Hello and welcome to the Prosperous Empath podcast, designed especially for empaths and highly sensitive entrepreneurs just like you who are committed to having it all and achieving holistic success. I'm your host, Catherine Wood, Master Certified Coach, mom, author, mastermind leader, and founder of Unbounded Potential, a boutique coaching firm for empathpreneurs. I'm on a mission to bring empathy back into the world of business. Each episode will focus on achieving more by doing less and revealing how you too get to have it all in your life, your leadership, and your legacy. If you are committed to doing good and running a conscious business, but truly giving yourself permission to have it all while doing so, proving that you can have both in a society that tells you you can't and you are in the right place. Join me here every other week to find out how. Be sure to subscribe and leave a review so you won't miss an episode. Plus, you'll find all the show notes and helpful resources over at unbounded-potential.com. Hello. Welcome back to the podcast. Kat here. If you've been tuning into the podcast recently, you've likely noticed that I've been doing things a little bit differently of late. I have been recently sharing some of my most favorite and powerful tools and frameworks and coaching distinctions that I use with my private clients and my clients in my mastermind. And I've been doing this super intentionally because I have been sitting with the despair and grief and fear of what's going on in my own country and what's happening in, many countries and cultures around the world. And I notice I've been feeling just this sense of hopelessness and powerlessness, which I know many of you are. And for me, whenever I am present to that fear or sense of powerlessness, it's always a sign for me to really take a look within, to sit with, first of all, that emotion and that fear and that grief and, whatever emotion I'm present to, and really feel it on purpose, allow it to move through me, and then connect with who I want to be in the matter. And I've been doing that process sometimes on a daily basis of late because there feels like there's so much to be with. And what's been coming up for me is just this invitation to share what has made the biggest difference for me and the clients I work with. And what I really appreciate about my work as a coach is that coaching really supports people going through periods of transition. And it feels like as society, as culture, as a world, as a country, we are really going through a powerful transition right now. And it's incredibly confronting. And I've been really just sitting with that resistance and that fear that I know is very pervasive right now. And what I've realized is that one of the biggest contributions I can make right now is to support folks in changing the way we're looking at things so that the things we're looking at change. So with that, in today's episode, I really want to share with you some of the distinctions and frameworks that I think have been the most impactful for my clients over the past decade in supporting them in a changing and unpredictable job market in periods of transition in their careers, whether they're at a place of, whether you are at a place of wanting to finally leave the 9-to-5 and pursue your own entrepreneurial dream, whether you have been laid off in this current job market, whether you've been fired or whether you've chosen to see yourself out. Some of these tools and exercises that I'm going to share with you today have been just some of the most impactful for my clients in navigating those periods of transition in the job market with intentionality, with purposefulness, and with integrity. I hope you find today's episode useful. as a way to kick off this conversation, I actually wanted to share some words that have been, filling me with peace and maybe just a fire as I read them. So these words come from the book, The Answer to How is Yes, Acting on What Matters by Peter Block. Now, he is a consultant and change agent, and he talks about inviting change. And he wrote this, let's see, when did he publish this book? He first published this book in 2002, so well before what we're experiencing now. But these words feel not only timeless, they also feel incredibly applicable to what we're experiencing right now. Here's what he says. The fear of capitalism is that our desires and idealism are dangerous to the economy, that we will be pleasure-seeking, become artists, and worst of all, seek meaningful work. We control this dangerous impulse through the budget. What's more, it leads to the situation in which money itself becomes a commodity to be sought after, money doing business on its own, detached from any relation to the soul of the world. The psychic starvation brought about by removing soul from the world produces insatiable greed, for when the world is no longer surrounded with soul, a vast emptiness intervenes that must be filled. He goes on to add that we purchase progress at the expense of our own humanity and heartfelt desires. Oof. It just feels so apropos for what we're going through right now. And I'm so present to the journey of becoming a prosperous empath. And that for me and for so many of my clients, that journey often looks like embracing our own humanity. And our own humanity includes our own heartfelt desires. It includes connecting with our soul. It includes connecting with our own emotionality and humanity. And it can be really hard to embrace our own humanity in the face of, the insatiable greed and power dynamics and world we're living in right now. And that is so much of what there is to do. It's to lean in, not to turn away. So with that, let's shift into this conversation about how do we lean in. Now, I shared with you before that I think coaching can really support those in periods of transition. And a lot of that starts with being willing to welcome and say yes to the transition, just like Peter Block's title of his book, The Answer to How is Yes. Now, there is a huge fundamental difference between inviting in, welcoming, and saying yes to change and transition and growth and evolution and reinvention versus feeling like it's happening to you. You didn't ask for this. You didn't want this. This is unfair. How could this happen? Now, I want to normalize that it's incredibly normal and to be expected that would be your first instinctual response, that you would instinctually respond from a place of fear, defensiveness, defiance, overwhelm, worry. It's really completely natural and human, right? When we're confronted with fear, we often fall into one of four buckets. We either take fight, flight, freeze, or fawn. Now, these are all ways of being that come from that to-me consciousness, which we talked about on the podcast a couple episodes ago when we talked about the 4 states of consciousness. We'll link to that episode if you haven't yet tuned in. Now, when we are in to-me consciousness, it's because there's something at risk. There's something that we're afraid of makes sense. Our nervous system is activated. We're confronted. We're afraid. We're responding from that anxious energy. Now, the opportunity and the invitation is to not stay there. It's to notice when we're coming from that place and to look at what there is to take responsibility for about our own emotional state so that we can shift to a place of ownership and responsibility for our own experience. So if we take a look at what's happening in the world right now, we do not need to accept what's happening in the world. In fact, please don't. That being said, we do need to accept that we are afraid and fearful. We do need to take ownership for that fear so that we can move to a place of choice and becoming the source and taking back agency for who we choose to be in the matter and for how we choose to respond. Now, if I didn't do that internal reflection for myself, I likely wouldn't even be here recording this episode with you today. I might still be showing up from this place of anger and resentment and defiance. How could he? And how could they? And how could they defund USAID? And how could they withdraw these grants and international aid? That's some of the most meaningful work I've done in my career. And how could they? And there's no growth, there's no reinvention, there's no transformation available when we're showing up from a place of how could they? Because when we're showing up from a place of how could they, we are placing power outside of ourselves and in the hands and pockets of other people. So it starts there. It starts with really sitting with the fear, the hopelessness, your own instinctive response, whether you fight, take flight, freeze, or fawn, and then looking at what there is to accept and acknowledge about that fear that you are feeling so that you can shift to a place of becoming the creator and the source of your own experience and connecting with who you want to be in the matter. Oof. So, as you do your own internal work and really can shift to that place of creation and source and agency, that's where you can really sit with this unpredictable job market, and perhaps you can navigate the layoffs and this season of change that we are in. All right. Now, so if you're falling in one of those places, right? If you have recently been laid off or fired or you've quit and you're in this important period of transition, you might be sitting with the question of what next and how do you want to pursue the current job market? You might feel like you are one of thousands who are navigating this season of layoffs and this turbulent job market, and you might feel a little bit hopeless. Now, here's something I'm really present to. As empaths, our emotional intelligence, our ability to connect, the integrity and hard work ethics that we bring to the job market are some of our greatest assets. Your values, your high integrity, your ambition, your hyper-functioning nature as an empath, these are all some of your comparative advantage in the job market. And you need to be able to articulate them and really own your comparative advantage in this current job market. So how do you do that? One of the qualities that I most appreciate about empaths is that we are so committed to our work being in integrity with our values and our purpose and how we want to contribute and the difference that we want to make. We are extremely mission driven and values oriented. Now, I think this is beautiful. This can also be challenging because sometimes we want our purpose and our work to be one and the same thing. And when they're not, that can lead to a feeling of being out of integrity or a feeling of breakdown or like there's something wrong. Now, some of my favorite teachings about purpose and work come from Nicholas Yanni, who's one of my favorite teachers. So this is one of his distinctions. I want you to envision two circles. And in one circle, you're going to name that circle your purpose. And the other circle, you're going to name that circle your work. So let's define each of these. So your purpose is the contribution that you want to make in this lifetime, the values that you live by and uphold. Your purpose are what you genuinely love and what lights you up. Your purpose is what inspires you and the gifts that you have that you want to share. Your purpose is how your essence is expressed externally. Your purpose is also a representation of what you stand for and what you stand against. Now, this is very aspirational and deeply connecting for so many of us as empaths, right? Okay, so that's your purpose. Now, your work, if we look at the bottom line of what your work is your work is simply an allocation of how you spend your time and how you earn a living to some degree. Now, if you think about these circles, what is the experience, your current experience of the relationship between these two circles? Are they touching? Are they overlapping? Is there a space in the middle that overlaps? Or are they on complete separate ends of the paper or your own perspective? Now, at different periods in your career, the relationship between these two circles and the physical proximity to these two circles shifts. And that's okay. I think for many of the clients in my own life who are providers or financially responsible for their own families, they often go through a period in their own careers where the proximity between their purpose and their work feels far off. Their work might feel very disconnected from their purpose. They might find value or be a contribution or express their passion in ways that are completely disconnected from their work. And that is completely okay. Now, as an empath, it might really not feel okay. It might feel like your purpose and your work have to be intertwined. But I want to invite you to consider that at different periods of your career and your journey in this lifetime, those circles shift. And the proximity or the distance between them becomes closer, becomes intertwined. Perhaps they overlap one another, and they might be completely separate. And that is okay. Now, here's the kicker. It's when we can really acknowledge the relationship between those two circles and allow it to be okay that we can make that choice from an empowered place. So consider that if you're not being on purpose, you're being off purpose. So if you can be purposeful about the relationship between your work and your purpose, that is where you can find peace and acceptance. That's also where you can shift from a place of to me to by me consciousness. And I think that peace and acceptance might really support you right now as you navigate this period of turbulence or uncertainty or transition in the job market, because you might be required, or you might need to, or you might choose to accept a job right now or apply for jobs right now that don't feel deeply intertwined with your purpose or your mission. And what if that was okay? What if that wasn't a problem? What if you allowed your work to simply be an allocation of your time and how you're currently earning a living, and you choose to pursue your passion and pursue what you stand for and what you stand against in a completely separate bucket or allocation of your time and energy. I think that coming to peace and coming to a place of acceptance with how you hold your purpose and your work right now is a huge gift of generosity and a way to embrace your own humanity that is incredibly supportive for empaths as you navigate this current job market. Great. So now that we've distinguished the relationship between your purpose and work, let's apply that and look at some tools that can support you as you navigate the job market. So here's the first invitation. You need to be able to leverage your strengths. Now, as an empath, it can be really challenging getting comfortable taking up more space and talking open-heartedly about your expertise and your strengths. As empaths, we're so much more practiced and comfortable in asking questions, in selling other people, in talking up other people, in being enrolled in what other people have to offer or share because of how deeply we value relationship and generosity and being of service. So I just want to normalize that this might feel really uncomfortable. It can be hard for empaths to talk about ourselves. In reality, this is one of the main reasons I launched the Prosperous Empath podcast 2 years ago, because I realized that there was a huge opportunity for me to take on this practice for myself in order to be able to share some of my expertise with more empaths and really contribute in a way that felt meaningful and aligned with my own purpose. So how do we do this? How can we get more comfortable talking about ourselves, talking open-heartedly about our expertise and our strengths? So here's the kicker. For many of us, that resistance to talking open-heartedly about our expertise and strength lies in this idea that we're talking about ourselves. And that can feel really selfish. As empaths, we really struggle with that notion of being selfish or feeling like we're being selfish. But the truth of the matter is that you don't need to talk about yourself, and you don't need to come from that place that you are talking about yourself. You can talk about the people you serve, or the people you've served in the past, or the impact your efforts have created, the difference your work has made. And in reality, when you can connect your storytelling and your work with its impact and its contribution and its results, it's so much more enrolling, it's so much more powerful, and people can feel that open-heartedness. People can feel how deeply you care. So again, this doesn't have to be an I conversation. It can be a we and us conversation. That shift from I and me to us and we is one of the most important frameworks that can help you get more comfortable in taking up more space and talking more open-heartedly about what you have to bring to the table. And as you're able to talk more open-heartedly about what you bring to the table, the size of your table is going to expand. It's going to get bigger because you're going to be able to lead more people and make a bigger contribution. Here's the second invitation. Prioritize meaningful work in this job market. Now, that might feel incredibly confronting because you might not feel like you have a choice in this job market. You might feel the pressure to accept the first offer that comes your way or accept a job that doesn't fully align with your values and purpose. And if that's the case, I invite you to choose that job on purpose. Again, if you're not being on purpose, you're being off purpose. Your work does not have to be one and the same with your purpose, but you do need to choose your work purposefully and with purpose, because if you choose it, if you say, I'm taking this job because of a commitment to provide for my family, to provide financial stability, to provide financial security, then that frees you up to pursue your purpose in a separate environment or a separate manner. Now, that being said, if you don't have to jump at any job offer, if you have the capacity to be selective about what job you say yes to, then I really believe it's important now more than ever to stand firm in your values and to choose a job, to choose a next position that aligns with your core values. One of my favorite exercises to pursue with clients as they navigate job transitions is to help them get really clear on their core values. Now, I get it. The frequency with which the word values is used, I think it can really take away some of the potency and some of the powerful decision-making that having your values distinguished can allow and provide for you. For prosperous empaths in particular, who struggle with decision-making, who struggle with connecting with our own intuition or gut, or have a tendency to people please, getting into deep relationship with your core values provides a framework for decision making and can serve as a compass for living. Consider that your core values provide a framework for decision making. They can serve as a compass for living, one that's assigned with your beliefs, commitments, thoughts, words, and action. Living in alignment with your values provides a pathway for living free and for living more peacefully. Now consider that standing firm in your values, it sets you apart in the job market. It allows your authenticity and your integrity to shine through rather than your fear shining through. So there are so many frameworks for distinguishing your core values. I'm going to share with you a couple that are two of my favorites. So one comes from Brené Brown's Dare to Lead program. Now, you can search for this online, and essentially you'll find an exhaustive list of hundreds of core values. So the first practice is to just go through that list and select or circle all the core values that resonate for you. Avoid overthinking at this point. And then as you read through the list, I want you to group those values. So you're going to go through an exhaustive list of core values, circle all the ones that speak to you, and then you're going to group those values in a way that makes sense to you. You might consider choosing 4 to 6 groupings. If you have more, you can drop the least important ones, and then choose a word within each grouping that reflects that group or a common theme within that group. Again, I invite you not to overthink it. And then lastly, if this is helpful, you can add a verb before each value. So for instance, if mindfulness is one of your grouping categories and you want to add a verb before it, it might sound like acting with mindfulness. Or if joy is one of your core values, it might sound like multiply joy. One of my core values is togetherness. It's so important for me. So if I were to add a verb before togetherness, I might say choose togetherness. Okay, great. So that's the first path to uncover your core values. And then the second one is a little bit more personal. So this one I've really appreciated over the years. So I invite you to consider, this is a writing prompt, consider 4 people you admire. These might be people close to you, like for me, it was always my great aunt. Or it may be people who are more aspirational, someone you don't know, someone from history. So again, choose 4 people you admire. And then for each, I invite you to journal on what are the qualities you admire and in what experiences or memories you have of them did they display these qualities. And then you can revisit what you wrote and look for common themes. And again, with those common themes, you're going to create a list of 4 to 6 core values that you hold. And then this goes for both exercises. You want to rank that list of 4 to 6 core values in terms of importance. Now, something I appreciate about our core values is that they get to evolve with us as we do. And yet, they are a constant decision-making tool that we have in our back pocket. Because once you've distinguished your core values for yourself, whenever you're approaching a decision or accepting a job or choosing whether to even apply for a job, consider, what is the decision aligned with your core values, or what does living your core values look like here? It is an incredibly liberating and empowering tool for decision making. Great. Okay, now the last distinction I want to invite you to consider is the invitation to network with intention. One of my most favorite books that I've read that I think truly speaks to empaths and how empaths thrive and can be successful is the book Give or Take by Adam Grant. And he has this beautiful distinction between the givers who thrive and the givers who don't make it. So essentially, what sets a giver up to succeed in life, in business, and in their work? And essentially, it is their willingness to ask for help. As givers, we're so practiced in giving that it can oftentimes result in us occurring as needless. Now, this is something that I have worked through much of my adult life. Like, it's this idea that I'm over-functioning and really practiced in being efficient and in getting life done. And the consequence of that is that it can often have me show up as not having needs. Like, I've got everything handled, nothing to see here. What do you need? How can I help? Now, this is something I've really been dismantling in motherhood, because it's really hard to occur and be needless as a mom, because there's so many needs constantly placed on you, the ones that are seen and the ones that aren't. So this has been such an empowering practice for me, just breaking up with this idea of going it alone, even if it's not true, because for many of us, it's not true. It's just in our head. So getting practiced in being self-revealing, in allowing others to see the messy middle, and making open-hearted and non-strategic requests for help is one of the key characteristics that we can apply in order to thrive as givers. So how might this apply to you when you're considering what jobs to apply for or how to identify your next position? So for me, networking with intention starts with just this knowing that typically other people are more present to our strengths and our gifts than we are for ourselves, because we are preconditioned to relate to ourselves from a perspective of what's familiar or what's comfortable for us, right? Like, it's that whole realm of what lies in your comfort zone. What lies in your comfort zone are things that you've already done, things that you're practiced in, that you're comfortable with, that you're familiar with. So if you're really looking to evolve or you're wanting to shift out of your current field, it's going to require you to get uncomfortable. Essentially, it's going to require you to do something you've never done before. And for most of us, we're often just not familiar or not practiced in making that decision or in even knowing what that decision is. So requesting feedback and letting people in to support us or to provide inspiration or input for our decision-making process can be really helpful as we look to grow beyond the confines of our current comfort zone. The thing I always like to say about our comfort zone is that for many of us, we think that it's inelastic, we think that it's defined and that it's fixed, when in reality, our comfort zones are very much elastic. They expand and retract along with our own willingness to act outside of them. And knowing that others believe in us and believe that things are possible for us that are currently outside of the confines of our comfort zone are incredibly empowering as we look to grow and stretch and move beyond the current realm of what we believe is possible for ourselves. So in closing today, I want to leave you with a practice that is the practice from the first chapter of my book, Belonging, Overcome Your Inner Critic and Reclaim Your Joy. And it is a practice that I often leave my clients with at the very beginning of our work as they are working on really getting clear on what's next for them and what they want to leverage the coaching container to create and bring to life for them. And it's truly a practice in expanding our own realm of what's possible for us. Here's the practice. Taking action, looking to the future. Gandhi truly understood the power of our mindset when he said, your beliefs become your thoughts become your words become your actions. Just like working out a new muscle group at the gym takes practice, repetition, and patience to see results, so too does honing our beliefs, becoming consciously aware of our thoughts, and acting on them. You may think you don't know what you want, or you may know what you want and fear taking action, but either way, you're in the right place. One of my favorite exercises to do with clients to practice strengthening this muscle is to begin by welcoming feedback and input from others. Others, like our loved ones, are typically more reliable for reflecting what is possible for us than we are for ourselves when beginning this journey to wholeness and wholeheartedness. Today, you will begin by choosing 10 people who know and love you. These are your supporters and champions. Consider people across different areas of your life, including family, friends, colleagues, social groups, college, church groups, etc. And all you're going to do is send these 10 people the following question and request a reply. Here's the question. If there were no limits or boundaries to what I could accomplish or be doing differently with my life, where would you see me next, or what do you think my achievements would be? Feel free to send this question as a text message or via email, but I invite you to take this practice on. I hope you found today's episode helpful. I hope that you found it applicable. I hope that you found empowerment and direction and the normalization that you are not alone in this job market. Thank you so much for tuning in, for spending this time with me, and I will see you next time. Thanks so much for tuning into this episode of the Prosperous Empath Podcast. With me, your host, Catherine Wood. Make sure you subscribe and leave a review so you don't miss an episode, and so more empathpreneurs just like you and me can find the show. You can find all the show notes and resources shared over at unbounded-potential.com. And if you're looking for more community and conversation like the ones we have here, join us in the Unbounded community at unboundedmastermind.com, the unique space for empathpreneurs committed to doing good as we grow, give and get support, and most importantly, come together.